Hello, folks. Welcome back to All Aboard with Rob Belliveau. I'm Rob Belliveau, and today is a podcast literally decades in the making. I am so honored, but excited, a little fearful as well, to have the CEO of D2L, which stands for Desire to Learn, and the makers and founders of Brightspace, which is the learning management system that connects us all, John Baker. John, welcome.
Rob, good to be here. That's a pleasure. No need to be fearful. Looking forward to the conversation.
It'd just be like one of our other normal calls we have, just a Teams or Zoom catch up. That's what we're doing here. So, John, I met John years ago, back for those that follow the story of NeonTrain and myself, when I was with Halifax Fire, and we were trying to find a solution for online learning management. And the successful vendor was D2L and their product Brightspace. And John and I first kind of crossed paths there. John, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining. I want to dive right in with a question because that's just what I do. We're here talking today about the technology. We're going to talk about our relationship a bit. You were at University of Waterloo. You found a problem you wanted to solve. And the statement that came out of that's still part of D2L's mantra today, which is to transform the way the world learns. Can you tell our listeners a bit about that impetus for you, that transition from, being a student learner to wanting to be a solutionist, eventually entrepreneur / techpreneur, now, CEO of a publicly traded company? Bring us back to that day and tell us who John Baker was then and who is John Baker today.
This is actually our anniversary week, actually. It was 27 years ago this week that I was a 22-year-old student in university at the University of Waterloo. And like most students in their third year, I was wrestling with one key question. What's the most important problem we could solve that would have the biggest impact on the world was the one that I was wrestling with. Mm-hmm. We'd gone from solving all the big challenges in our engineering career up to that point to, wanting to find a problem to solve. And that actually proved to be pretty hard. There's lots of great ideas in terms of what you can do with your life.
Yeah.
But for me, anchoring on what's the most important that I could solve that would have the biggest impact was my calling, if you will. And so transforming the way the world learns seems to be at the heart of solving all the world's problems. And so we set out to build that learning platform that could break down the barriers, that it could engage, that could inspire, that it can help people achieve even more than they dreamed possible. And so still ask myself that same question really every month. Are we working on the most important problem that's going to have the biggest impact?
Yeah.
Because as you clearly understand this yourself as an entrepreneur, there's no shortage of challenges to solve. The key is focusing on the things that are going to have the biggest impact. And then creating that flywheel effect where you can build a great organization that really builds good connections with their clients, really understands the challenges they're facing to really be able to deliver on that promise. And so, yeah, I think being an entrepreneur is one of the best things you can do with your life. I think it's going to be in high demand in the future as we get into this artificial intelligence revolution. And I think, it's actually a lot of fun. Because along the way, you pick up lots of great clients and you pick up lots of great employees that really align around this mission that we're all on. So it's probably a great moment to celebrate hitting 27 years.
That's amazing. 27 years and now CEO, publicly traded, Canadian success story. What does your work look like today on a daily basis?
Not all that different, maybe a little less coding than back in the early days.
Yeah.
I'd say,
I'm sure your teams actually hopefully keep you out of the coding a little bit, do they? Or
they do their best. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And they're quite good at it. So I have no trouble with that. No, I think today, beyond working with clients and making sure you're building a fantastic product that solves these really important problems, I spend a lot more time with investors and also just connecting with folks all over the world. My work now is taking me out of North America. I headed to, for example, Spain or Norway or Philippines, Singapore. These are typical destinations for me now as we are opening up new markets all over the world. And then I spent a lot more time on the strategy, as you can imagine, really thinking through the future. What do we need to do 3, 5, 10 years out, and making sure we're positioning the company to have the capability, the capital, and the support to go off and accomplish those big ideas. So I'd say, no shortage of energy, as you can, Rob, and I'm excited about the future. So
more problems you're finding and more solutions for education is really, really where you're going with that.
Yeah, no, I think we're at a pivotal moment. I can't think of a more impactful time to be working in our space than right now. We've seen big transformations like the internet, mobile, cloud technology, but AI is going to be the biggest transformation ever.
We'll put a pin in that because we're going to talk about AI in a minute. But before we go a little further, I want to acknowledge, and I want to do something a little different on this podcast. You're a special guest, and it's really awesome to have you here. You may notice I have a little blemish on my eye. I walked into an immovable object on the weekend, and I was wondering how I could hide this today to you. And I'm not going to hide it. I'm just going to call it out that I walked into an object, but I'm going to frame it with something else that's actually D2L related, because I used to be a hockey player, and I was thinking, how do I blend my eye in with this podcast? So just give me a second. I'll show you how I'm going to do that.
Well, that's a great jersey.
Going back to my hockey roots, folks. Just thought I'd put this right in front of you, John, and lighten it up a little bit so my eye doesn't look so out of place.
Yeah, no, it's better than the nick I took shaving. So it's all good. Rob, in all seriousness, though, it's not the challenges you face. In this case, the guy you might get.
Yeah.
It's how you pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and carry on. There's going to be lots of people that try to throw all kinds of obstacles in your way of building a great company. So, yeah, I'm glad we're on the podcast here together.
Yeah. So we talk a bit about the past and, our journeys connected when I was with Halifax Fire. And back then, 2013-ish, we were moving forward with you. And, I'm just thinking back to, I know what it was like for me in this whole new world of technology and how I wanted to change the way training was happening in a municipal fire department, which had been very historically based and lecture based and PowerPoint based and, much more static. And, at some point, something must have come across your desk that there was a fire department in Halifax looking at using Brightspace and connecting that with transforming the way world learns. What do you remember of those early days when you first heard of fire and this guy named Rob Belliveau popping across your desk?
Well, actually, at the time, I think you were a second or third fire department that picked up our technology. So you were very early. And one of our very first really underscored for me the impact that learning can have. And they underscored that, hey, if we can get our firefighters using this technology in the fire hall instead of being off on a training camp somewhere, it would actually save lives. And they had actually calculated they saved many lives by using our technology. And so for me, I wanted to learn more. I wanted to get down there, understand what your thoughts were in terms of how to leverage this technology to really have a big impact on the quality of the experience for your members and for your communities, and make sure that we're doing our best to help you be really successful. So it's probably a great example of like really just trying to understand your clients and also enjoy the ride on the fire truck. And
yeah, that was fun too.
But I think anytime you can learn more and try to figure out how you can multiply your impact together, it's worth the trip.
Yeah. We always try to position the podcast here for folks that are listening to learn from our guests, learn from me, hopefully, and learn from the dialogue and conversation. What you speak to there, as we talk about your journey from an entrepreneur, student entrepreneur to a CEO, I hear you talking to the entrepreneurs out there about not worried to take a chance or there's going to be hiccups. And in this case, I think another lesson which people listening to, you made an active decision not to sit in your boardroom or not to sit in your headquarters and get to know who that customer was and what they needed to be successful. And I think that's a really valuable takeaway for anyone on a business leadership, senior management, or C-suite area to not forget that voice of customer. It's really interesting you bring that up. And it sounds like you're in your travels you mentioned earlier, you're still doing that every day.
Oh, absolutely. I can't think of anything more important than getting out there, understanding not only what the customers are doing, but what your people are doing, what the broader market is experiencing, what the challenges are in the market. Really being able to make sense of all of that, to distill that back into a coherent strategy to go off and execute is a critical part of the job.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
and it's also something I've always loved. Like lots of people can hide behind their desk or their monitors. I prefer to get out there and actually see the world.
Yeah. That speaking to the entrepreneur, back in 2019, you and I, over the years, we've been to fusions together, which listeners at this point, I think, know Fusion is a D2L users conference around typically North America, where educators, technologists, administrators, executives all come together and learn from each other in these amazing, awesome sessions. And this is where this jersey came from, a Fusion in Toronto a couple of years ago. We were at the Future of Skills Summit in Toronto. You and I were chatting afterwards, and I was contemplating some career changes and having looked up to you over the years. I said, "What do you think?" And of course, you pointed to the D2L website and the job board that was available, and that was option A, and there was option B of. You kind of sensed I had an idea for something, and you said you could take the easy path and take a job or apply for a job and maybe get it. But then you could take the harder path. And like, if you have an idea for something, take that path. And in the long run, you never know where it'll end up. But you said, make sure I keep you in the loop for what that might be. Speaking to a person out there contemplating career change or wanting to be in the educational technology world or not sure, the easy path versus the hard path, that really stuck with me. You took a hard path out of university. Me leaving my career to start NeonTrain, I took your advice and took the harder path. Why did you frame it that way?
Well, I think at the time, and I still say this to folks that want to be entrepreneurs, and you can see the spark in people when they've got the ability to articulate a vision, a dream for the future, and know they want to go off and have a bigger impact than they're having today. It's pretty easy to see that spark in people. And my favorite thing to tell folks that are at that juncture, if you will, is there's always a job. And so, if you go off and apply yourself and try to solve these big challenges and really have an impact and it fails, there will be always people like me that want to hire folks like you. And so there really is not the same kind of risk that you actually think there is. And so as long as you're thinking through, your own personal risks, your risks to your family, to the impact that you're going to have and what it's going to take to actually go off and do it, the fallback position of a job is always there.
Yeah.
And I think most people need a little bit of a nudge, I'd say, Rob, to feel a little bit more comfortable that there's folks out there that are going to mentor, support, give advice. And so just making sure that's understood is really important to me. Yeah.
The advice was certainly heard, and later on, past COVID, obviously in COVID, the nudge or support that you had shown me, I came back and I was like, "Hey, John, remember that conversation in 2019? I think I have an idea. I'm going to take the harder path, and I want to help get Brightspace into smaller and medium-sized organizations, companies, even schools that currently D2L doesn't, or still to this day, doesn't really service." You had built D2L from the ground up. You have all these markets. You have, have groups in various verticals, as we call them. I come knocking on the door looking for this kind of partnership, and we were able to figure out a way to make it work, and you've allowed that to happen, and it's a trust that you've placed in us that I take very seriously. The harder path, the ask, and then some trust. When you see now the extension of your technology, we're in year 6, which is crazy to think about, year 6 of doing this. How does that, your reflection of that, how does that play back to you now, thinking about, giving the harder path a chance with a partnership and a strategic alliance like with NeonTrain? And, where do you see the value in that for how D2L operates today and how our two companies now coexist and work together?
Well, I think really a couple things. One, I've always had a passion for clients, no matter what size they And a lot of our early clients were, a single professor trying to
Mm-hmm.
figure out how to put their course online, or maybe a small MBA program that had, 25 students. And that's how we got our start, was helping those folks accomplish far more than they ever dreamed possible with their offerings. And then just continuing to scale. And then as you scale, to the size that we are, it's tough to make sure that you got that same care for every customer. And so I always look for ways to do that. And I saw the care that you put into the implementation you had in Nova Scotia. And I had full confidence and full trust in your ability to care for customers of ours at that stage. And so I actually didn't think of it as a big risk. I thought of it as an experiment.
Phew. But now you tell me that 6 years later, like, where was that 6 years ago?
Well, it's true. And I thought about it when you have your heart in something that really is going to have an impact for a lot of people. And they're just at simply a different scale. They just haven't got to the scale they want to be. They're just getting started. What's the real risk? Like you're investing in people. And so I actually love what you're doing, Rob, and I'm quite proud to call you a partner. And I think, I hope that we see more of this all over the world. We work with like clients that have 1.6 million students in higher education, or we have small clients that have eight people that are using our platform. And that dynamic, I want to continue to see persist as we continue to scale. And quite often doing that in collaboration with partners like you is a fantastic way to bring that community together.
Well, I appreciate that. And our team, I am one person now of a team. We have an awesome team that supports those clients and really does care about the customer journey. And, for listeners of the podcast here, we often have many customers of ours and learning providers. We call them learning providers mostly, to have and celebrate their successes on the show of like what they are doing, because what really empowers me, I think I caught your bug. And I'm not just saying that because you're on the show, is I get so much reward from watching my customers transform the learning they do with their people, right? With their mission-based nonprofit or their business-to-business that can't grow if they're not using online learning to expand their business development portfolio or expand the continents they serve on. We have one customer that started here in Canada and now is on 3 different continents.
Wow.
With the same amount of employees. They've scaled their company and they couldn't have done it without Brightspace and our help. So, transforming the way the world learns, while it's not our tagline, know that we live it every day.
Well, I think the success that you've had is fantastic. And again, you serve a lot of clients now that are all seeing good success because of the work that you're putting in. And I think it's also a great proof point that if you care deeply, you can do it. You can go off and build an amazing business. In your case, you've seen tremendous growth over the last 6 years. Congratulations.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
And I hope it just continues to pick up speed as you go forward.
We're working on it. Every day.
That's why partnerships matter.
100% with your teams. And again, D2L has been a great support. We work with your sales team. We work with your internal product teams. We work with your marketing teams. We work with all of them. And it's so great to have that partnership, which we really feel truly connected and want to keep that mission going. And on the heels of earlier, you were saying, about the coding days and how you're not really in those anymore. I know you're still keenly watching technology and how that is influencing the marketplace we are in of online learning and affecting that learning journey. I don't know that we've had a more disruptive, and not disruptive in a negative way, just disruptive from the true definition of technology is when it comes to AI right now. And I know that, within the D2L platform, you have Lumi, we have Lumi Plus, we have Creator Plus that's bringing AI elements in. Accessibility Plus that's bringing AI in too. And, D2L's invested heavily in AI in the last 3-4 years to get ahead of that curve and have, solutions for both instructors, professors in the teaching world of who we work with every day, but also the learner that needs to learn and wants to learn. That's a lot. Like, I'm sure at some point a few years ago, you thought, okay, I've made the platform, I've got the company, and we just rinse, repeat. Then comes in AI and like, wow, what a disruption. So where do you sit on that strategic map when you look at, protecting what works within education, but also empowering the future of development using this very explosive technology?
Yeah, well, it's not the first time we've seen disruptive technology come into the market. We got started with a disruptive technology called the internet.
Yeah, that's right.
And drove the adoption of new ways of thinking about how to build these learning platforms to support people in much different ways than they were doing traditionally. And then mobile, cloud, now AI. And so what we've learned over the years is really to not fear these technologies, figure out how to embrace them, but embrace them with a foundation of responsible use. And so for us, it started off with like, here's our responsible AI strategy. That's going to have pillars around protecting our clients' data, so that when they're leveraging AI, they're not, sending students information or their own.
It's not going out into the netherland.
Out to these big LLMs for them to enjoy the benefits of. No, like we're gonna build this on privacy, data security, and put in place the right infrastructure. And then we tried to, like you were doing, tried to figure out who the right partners are. Leveraging now over 12 different models to help support our clients in different ways. Also fine-tuning models to support things like adaptive learning. And so we're doing a lot of work to make sure that we're embracing these technologies. And then bringing, again, goes back to that key question, what are the things that we can do that will have the biggest impact, that will have, that we can solve, that we're really going to go out there and really help our clients through these big transitions. And so for us, Lumi started off doing exactly that. Looking at the, in this case, the course designer or the instructor or faculty, depending on the user profile, and figuring out how do we save them a lot of time.
A lot of time.
If we can cut the cost of developing programs in half, then it gives them time back to build either more programs, higher quality programs. It gives them time to actually give better mentorship or better coaching to folks that are taking the courses themselves. It creates this big efficiency engine. And so that's, first and foremost, but it also takes, existing content like Word documents or PowerPoints or PDFs and turns them into like really engaging, interactive courses that help students get a better outcome, help them learn better. And so I think this is, just the very beginning of a big, big transformation. And at the end of the day, it's AI plus people like you and your users and your clients, really resulting in a much better experience for learners and ultimately better outcomes for everybody.
Yeah, and those efficiencies would also drive other things where organizations can maybe look at that efficiency and either, as you said, do it quicker, better, or reinvest that time and money into expanded programs, teaching more people more things, right?
Yeah, and absolutely. And quite often, the first stage of this is really embracing these technologies to transform your user experience. Which would you rather? Would you rather go in and create 1,000 questions by hand using a UI, or would you rather have the AI create 1,000 questions and you simply review and edit and take a look at the quality of the questions? And so I think we can, through the combination of learning science plus these technologies, really have a big impact in making that user experience better.
Yeah.
And then you get into more transformational efforts. But quite excited about this.
Do you have like one example or one story from the front line that you've heard since bringing in these technologies to the platform that you're like, yeah, that's why we're doing this. That's the efficiency, or that's the learner impact we wanted to have with this tool. Do you have one of those right off the tip of your tongue?
Yeah, no, there's dozens actually. My favorites are how clients are taking these technologies and improving the educational experience. And so, we spent a lot of time in Singapore working with our Singaporean clients, and they had a model of learning they wanted to see us support. So instead of read this, watch this, have a discussion, take a quiz to test your knowledge, they wanted that all on one page. And so we built out this tool called Creator Plus that makes it easy to create an experience where you're reading, watching, interacting, maybe have a flashcard exercise, practices. Those interactives are embedded in the page. And it just changes the emotional experience for the student. They go from, feeling a little bit isolated or a bit of more of a lonely journey in the traditional mode to feeling like you get the voice of the, educator or instructor or mentor on the page.
Right there, right next to them.
Giving you feedback on how you're progressing.
Yeah.
And so when you hit the next button, you're moving forward with confidence.
Yeah.
And then we'll obviously then apply AI to all of that to make it easier to actually build these experiences much, much faster. And so, yeah, that's one example.
Yeah.
One client we saw was almost a tripling of completion rates. So they had a course that everyone had to complete, but it was very low completion
Yeah.
rates. And so they saw a bit of tripling. Another client, these are efficacy studies now that we've published, saw, the time on task for learners going way down. So in other words, they were spending less time learning, but the knowledge sort of exams post went way up.
The outcomes are still there.
Outcomes were better with less time spent.
Wow.
And so I think, everybody wins when we make these investments to build better learning experiences.
Yeah. It's also really cool to give another little plug for that technology too, that from the instructor, the facilitator, the faculty member, the instructional designer, you don't need to know coding to put that content in and spin it up and create that better learner experience. The system is just out of the box there, drop and drag, plug and play, and you're off to the races.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's the concept of like recursive learning. So, we look at the quality of the output from these experiences and continually tweak the model to make sure the quality continues to go up.
Yeah.
And so what we saw early on was like lots of edits being made. We don't see a lot of edits being made anymore. No. We were getting much, much better in terms of out of the box producing what clients are looking for.
Yeah. It's so the efficiencies are becoming greater and greater every day. And with those efficiencies, quality is obviously important. But something that's always been an anchor, I feel, for D2L and Brightspace is accessibility. And, year after year, I see the social media, I see the website, best practice winner, best practice, accessibility. You've really put accessibility at the forefront, which, I think we talk about never leaving a learner behind. The technology is continually developed with that in mind. You have, tools like Accessibility Plus coming out with, making it easier for even the courseware designers or the instructional designers to build with accessibility in the forefront. That intersection of accessibility seems to be non-negotiable for you at D2L.
Yeah, no, I'd say right from the very beginning, Rob. So we used to ask the question, what are the barriers that exist in education? Lots of people would come up with all kinds of ideas for that. But then we would say, well, now how do we solve those barriers? And if you can open up access for folks that are blind or deaf to participate equally with everybody else, it changes their lives. And so when we first started, if you were blind or deaf, you had to have someone helping you through the learning experience. You either went to a school for the blind or you had someone sitting beside you helping you through. You're fully capable, but you just had this barrier that meant you had to have someone help you or you had to go somewhere special. And now,
which is exclusionary in and of itself and isolating and embarrassing, really, for lots of people, right?
Yeah. And now, we'll have a client discover that a student was blind 3 years into the learning journey because they had never even asked for an accommodation, never even asked for help. And so, to me, that is, turning something that was thought of as impossible into something that's possible. And those are magical moments. And our team is 100% committed to making learning far more accessible for far more people all over the world.
It's truly incredible to watch that development. And we use as many of those tools as possible when we're building our courses for customers and empowering them with other partners that D2L has in their ecosystem that are also on that journey. And we too take it really serious. When you look at that, and now we've talked about the beginning journey of John. We've talked about our intersection together. We've talked about the technology. Back as we close off, these amazing tools are built. The platform's running. Millions and millions of learners across the globe every day. You started the entrepreneurial journey. You're now in, this new era of publicly traded company and huge client bases. Looking back at D2L, the challenges you've overcome, the should have done that moments that I'm sure there was many, maybe even many you can't talk about here. What are one or two moments that those experiences ended up being your greatest teaching moment? Like if we're talking to other people looking at a personal journey or going from a smaller company to wanting to be a bigger company, what are a couple of those cues that looking back you tell one of us to never turn our back on?
I think it's when you see that spark in your organization that says, you go from like being an idea to a real company. And you see that at different stages. And, for example, I invested in another startup recently where I, just went to one of their board meetings and I said, you know what? You're a real company now. You've had to make some pretty tough decisions here, but you've managed to work your way through these challenges, and you've got a great vision for the future. And you can see how excited you are about the execution of that vision. And it's not coming from me, it's coming from them. And so the sort of like, the analogy I use is like if you're standing around a bonfire, so Canadians would get this reference pretty easily. Yeah. If it's a small circle, everyone's warm, everyone's comfortable. But the trick is, like, as the crowd gets bigger, as the company gets bigger, you've got to actually light more fires. Mm-hmm. More people in your organization have to carry that torch. And so, it's those moments, and there's been dozens of those at D2L, mm-hmm. where I look around and I go, wow, the team's got it.
Yeah.
They're making a better decision here than I ever would have dreamed of. And so it's that's the part that excites me. There's also times where you're chatting with clients and they talk about how, for example, I was in Brazil and met these two women as part of a visit that we did with the president of Brazil. And these women talked about how learning on our platform with our clients changed not their life, but broke the cycle of poverty for their kids.
Wow.
They managed to get a high school, then college experience, and then now into the workforce, and the cycle's broken now. And that was such a moment where then the president said, we're going to do this for 100,000 women, mm-hmm. not just 1,000. And multiply that by 100 in terms of like the number of times you hear those types of stories as you go around the world. And it's, those are the moments. That's why we do this. Rob. It's not it's tough to say, it's because of the millions of users or the fact that you're a big public company.
Yeah.
That's not it. Yeah. It's those human moments that matter the most.
It is. I agree. I see them every day. I'm very privileged to see them and a lot empowered by you with the partnership. And as we close off today, a final reflection back to the NeonTrain journey while, we talk about all these lessons in the entrepreneurial journey. We talk about the technology. NeonTrain thought they think we see a new gap in the market that we brought to your attention about a year ago to help serve the missing middle of organizations that equally deserve your technology, equally need your technology. And we're going to start managing that now with some really awesome ways of having Brightspace into those institutions. You were on board within minutes of talking about it. We leave off as, what's one thing on this journey that's actually surprised you about our partnership together and, these constant evolutions that you're doing. We're trying to do too in a different way and keep up with you and or get ahead of you in certain ways. What are one or two areas that you look back on our partnership in 6 years and say, wow, that actually surprised me?
Rob, I think the simple answer is like the passion that you've brought to this work has been incredible. And you see that show up with the people on your team that I've gotten an opportunity to connect with over the years. You see that with the clients that you work with. You're having a real impact, and you're making learning accessible to organizations that traditionally wouldn't be able to leverage this type of technology because they didn't have the capabilities themselves because they were smaller organizations, or maybe they're just getting started on the journey and they wouldn't have known otherwise. And you were really opening up our capability in terms of our ability to serve a much bigger market. And you're proving that no matter what size of organization you are, if you've got an ambition to provide the best learning possible to your people or to your clients or to your members, it's now possible. And I keep coming back to, like, if someone could actually make what is traditionally thought of as impossible possible, you change the world. And you are doing exactly that, Rob. So congratulations to you and your team. I continue to be impressed with everything you do.
Awesome. Well, it is a team effort. We've got a great team. I'm always amazed by what they do. Like, I know you're always amazed by what your team does. And our teams actually, I don't know if you know this, John, but our teams actually work behind our backs a lot and don't tell us those things. And those are always the moments that I actually really enjoy, because when I hear about it, I'm like, how did you do that? Well, I went to D2L and did this, and it's been really enjoyable. What a journey. We could go on for more, but we'll pin it here. I think the lessons for those out there listening around, the technology and learning, exploring some tools that are in the tool sets. If you're a Brightspace client, go start asking for them, go look for them. They're there. If you're an entrepreneur, if you're a person in a job looking for a change or looking to explore alternate areas, don't be afraid, fall forward. You've given me a lot of that power and strength, and I appreciate it. And hopefully listeners today are picking up on some of that, and it'll empower them to go find that problem to solve. Thanks for being with me today, John.
Thank you, Rob, and all the best.
If anyone has any questions, comments for John or myself after today, you can email us at allaboard@neontrain.com. And until the next show, we'll see you then.